What is going on, you guys? My name is Rage, and we are back today with a much debated topic in the Marvel Strike universe right now, being the Symbiote Team versus the Web Warriors. Now, if you guys are transitioning to the mid to late game, I do recommend you watching this video all the way through, just in terms of getting a better understanding of how the meta is changing right now, and things to be aware of, especially if you're working towards this coveted Dark Dimension 3, Dark Dimension 4, and ultimately into Dark Dimension 5, and you're planning to bring in some of these characters. Start things off here. You know, the Symbiotes team is one of the first teams that actually really synergize extremely well in the raids. And as well, originally characters such as Symbiote Spider-Man was intended for Dark Dimension, so that's why when he's in raids and Dark Dimension, he actually does get a lot of benefits here in terms of providing the healing sustain. And that's really where it kind of set a precedent in terms of Spider-Verse characters being used in the raids, you know. And most recently, with the recent release of Doom 2, the raids where it obviously rewards the teal orbs needed for Dark Dimension 5 preparation. This is really where that discussion started, because, you know, the Web Warriors were initially designed for the raids, and now there's this back and forth between, hey, I've already invested in so much in my symbiotes, should I actually reinvest in Web Warriors, or what's the argument there? And so in today's video, I want to show you guys an analysis overall, pretty objective in terms of facing the facts here, and you know, coming to terms with the future. So to start things off, I did actually prep a spreadsheet here, as you guys can see, labeled from all the characters as well as their unlock method and their uniques. I like to analyze it like this because, you know, when you're taking a look at this overview, it's objective. You can see essentially how they're unlocked, and as well as the mini uniques, the uniques that are actually used and involved in ultimately pushing them to tier 14, tier 15, so forth. And as you guys can see, the heavy congregation of the uniques used is the alien spores for the 5 symbiote characters versus Oz, which actually adds an element of the alien spores for Ghost Spider. So it is nice that she has the one off there, which means that players can, you know, likely not have to lean so heavily on the Oz. Now, that being said, I do want to focus on, in this case, the unlock method here for each of the characters. This is important because if you're starting off in the game and you're transitioning to mid game or even late game, how you unlock the character will determine how many shards you'll get, and then in the long run, it's going to determine overall how strong your character will be built. So in this case, you can see here that, you know, consisting with the symbiotes, you know, Anti-Venom was originally in War, he was also in Orbs, and now he's officially in Alpha Raid Orbs. Carnage is always in War, and then you can see Scream finally was released in the Arena. And then lastly, Symbiote Spider-Man is also kept in the last node right now, farmable in the final campaign of Doom Chapter 4. Really, the only friendly one for farming is actually Venom, and that's why I have him highlighted in the green. Conversely, with the Web Warriors, you know, Ghost Spider, this is just a guess, obviously, right? But usually the best character of each team is generally placed in the War Store, so I'm just giving her the benefit of the doubt. I'm guessing she's going to be in the War Store in due time. And then to start things off, Spider-Man and Miles Morales have already been in the Blitz Store, so that's a huge plus for those of you who are starting out in the game. And then next you have Spider-Punk and Scarlet Spider. You know, obviously both of them were farmable in the game with free-to-play events, but after that goes away, you know, Scopely will make that decision on whether or not they're going to be farmable in other aspects. So in this case, that's why I put them as campaign and arena and raid. Now they're in the blue because it's an intermediate difficulty. Sometimes it could be tricky, sometimes it could be easy. We don't know until it's actually released, but I don't actually believe it's going to be included in the War Store, just because it's very rare that they put 2 characters of the same team in the War Store. So there's a better likely chance that they're going to be included in some node or an arena or raid. Now, as you guys can see then, when we take a look at the difficulty level in terms of what they can bring, it is definitely a lot easier to achieve the Web Warriors, even with them being a new team. And that's really important right now, because you can see even in the background here of my teams right now, my symbiotes is a lot stronger than my Web Warriors, but I am building them up right now. And that's for a couple reasons, right? So number one, I do want a future-proof raid progression. Keep in mind, this team was originally designed for raid. So in this case, you know, the Web Warriors only have one job and one job only, and that's really powering through the raids. In this case, we spent a great deal of time in raids in the game because raids ultimately are involved every day. They reset every day, and as well, you know, they're the ones that are actually generating a lot of benefits right now, especially if it's the ISO 8 blue and as well as the teal or Dark Dimension 5. So in this, you know, Dark Dimension 3 and 4 do give you a boatload of rewards, but once you run them twice, you know, those characters that are originally intended for Dark Dimension, you know, you don't really use them often unless they're meta characters, you know. So that's one reason. The second reason is Web Warriors, you know, newer is always better. You know, in case you guys haven't noticed, most of the characters coming out generally have been better than the previous characters. And then this started an era last year where I believe it was Serval Surfer and Kestrel starting the trend, but it seems like every character that's been released statistically is better. There's been reworks that have also resulted in the statistical increases that we've seen in both Spider-Man and Miles Morales. Gamora is another recent one with Infinity Watch, but either way, they always do come out better and ultimately translate to a better progression for players that are pushing throughout the game and maximizing progression. Next thing is lower investment. As I noted earlier already, you know, this team actually does operate a lot better than the Symbiotes and Raids, and that's the main reason they're actually crushing them. So, you know, just for a reference, you know, I know my alliance has you know, symbiote teams that are 800, 900k plus, and then you would have a 400, 500k Web Warriors just completely dominating them in terms of raid progression, and it's just mainly due to their synergies and their passive abilities that are utilized in raids. And I can talk about that in a little bit later, but I just want to emphasize that because they just are a better overall synergy, and by allowing for that, we are really taking advantage of the meta and ideally future-proofing our raid progression. If you guys recall, when the Symbiotes first came out, and if you weren't here, they actually played a big part in pushing through raids, and they really, you know, used up their mileage. They definitely had great value in terms of what they brought. I used them in part of Dark Dimension 3 and Dark Dimension 4, but now it comes a time where we have to think creatively and use our resources while we still can, and not overly invest in characters that we see definitely falling out of the trend and the meta, and likely losing their usage unless a rework comes. And last but not least, the main reason that ultimately now pushes Symbiotes out of the meta, in my opinion, is the diversity in Dark Dimension. So, I mean, if you guys have seen my my earlier raid videos and guides, you'll know that I've brought up numerous times that Cloak and Dagger, and as well as Shang-Chi, being newer to the game, these characters are very, very powerful, and there's a very strong chance I am likely bringing them to Dark Dimension 5, just because I'm already using them in raids. They're very powerful. I've already invested in them, and they're closer to Dark Dimension 5 than my Symbiotes. It already gives you some efficiencies there. So what does that mean then for the Symbiotes? We can use these other city characters such as Shang-Chi, Cloak and Dagger, in combination with the Web Warriors, such as Ghost Spider, Scarlet Spider, so forth. We can use those combinations to replace Dark Dimension going forward, so that it's not wasted. You know, what the Symbiotes did for us was transition extremely nicely until an actual meta raid team actually came out specifically for the city characters, or as well as Spider-Verse. So in this case, they found their place. I believe the Web Warriors is here to stay, and that's why we should consider building them. Obviously, the exception is if you have a really maxed out symbiote roster and you're doing just fine in Doom 2.3, then I encourage you to keep doing what you're doing. But the one thing to be mindful here is to not stay ignorant here or stubborn, because keep in mind, knowing this game and knowing how they love to add difficulties, I think the limits for the symbiotes potentially is already 2.3. I'm sure as heck having issues with 2.3, and I have a lot of red stars on all my symbiotes, and I'm still having a hard time. That's why I have been building and investing in the Web Warriors, because I understand that flaw. As soon as there's another difficulty comes, or perhaps maybe there's Dormammu raids coming out, we can fully take advantage of the Web Warriors, because that's going to mean less overall investment with characters that we're going to have access to easier than the Symbiote 5 already. And as well, them being newer characters give us that advantage already in statistical boosts. So hope this video is able to give you guys some insight. Symbiotes have done their job in terms of bringing us to where we are now, and now it's time for them to pass on the torch to a new raid team that ideally can provide a lot more value as we creatively think about other strategies moving forward. So hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you as always. Do appreciate you checking on my channel, and I'll see you guys in the next one.